Why the arrogance?
Just bragging over sending a measly $1,200 to your family?
Didn't you just say that women are supposed to do the household chores? Just get to it and make dinner already. A measly $1,200. That's when my husband made it clear to me. How dare he speak like that when someone's working their tail off to send money home? I can't forgive such behavior. At that moment, I swore revenge on my husband. My name is Iris, a 29-year-old nurse working at a private hospital. I met my husband Jones at a work party and we got married 2 years ago. Although I was still a newbie in the nursing world, I had no plans of quitting after getting married. He too wanted me to continue working, thinking of a future, so I'm still with the same hospital where I started as a fresh graduate. My hospital shifts rotated every 8 hours, so sometimes I'd work for 16 hours straight in a day. For example, I might start 8 in the morning, supposed to finish by 5 in the evening, but then I'd switch to a night shift starting at 1 a.m. We often lost our couple time due to our jobs, but he was supportive and most importantly, I loved my job and felt fulfilled. Life centered around work was comfortable, but my only gripe was that Jones couldn't do any housework. He'd never cooked, cleaned, or done laundry in his life, having been spoiled by his stay-at-home mom. Since our marriage, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that I'd taken over his mother's role. We had many discussions deciding to split living costs and getting him to help with some basic chores. Although it felt a bit unfair, I had my own money to spend and wasn't too bothered by it. I thought in time he'll learn to pitch in more. However, about a year after we got married, Jones came to me with a request. I want to send some money to my folks. Can you help me out? My pay isn't that great, so I don't have much left for them. Caught off guard by his request, I hesitated. We both worked and managed our own money. I always thought we'd handle things like families matters separately. It wasn't that I didn't want to help, but I wasn't ready to just agree without thinking.
If you want to help them out, why don't you do it with whatever you can afford? It's not like we're struggling here, and I don't like the idea of our finances getting mixed up, I responded.
We have our own married life to think about, so there's no need to send money to our folks beyond what we can afford. I told him maybe we should reconsider the amount we're sending. He hesitated and then replied, "The thing is, I got a call from my folks recently. They're having a tough time, so I was wondering if you could help out until I get a raise." Knowing how dire his parents' situation seemed, it was hard to say no. It would be a different story if he wanted to send money and asked me to help him, but if I heard that his parents were in trouble, I wouldn't be able to leave him alone. I earned more than Jones, and being not very materialistic, most of my salary after expenses goes into savings. Sending money wouldn't be a problem. Given his plea, I agreed to help out. However, I soon regretted it. Turned out, nearly half of my monthly salary, $1,200, was being sent to his folks. He convinced me it was just until he got a raise, and I heard his parents were thrilled, so I felt obligated. Despite all that, I had my thoughts. We barely knew his parents, only visiting during holidays. Moreover, I was used to saving that amount every month, so I felt a bit uneasy. But as time went by, I got used to the arrangement. However, I wasn't the only one growing complacent. Jones, who had been grateful at first, slowly started taking it for granted. I wasn't looking for gratitude, but given it was his request, his attitude was baffling. His nonchalance increasingly irked me. One day, on Jones' days off, I was getting ready for work. That day, I had a morning shift. I made him breakfast and lunch before heading to the hospital and returned home in the evening. Walking into the living room, I saw Jones, still in his pajamas from the morning, lounging on the sofa. It was clear he hadn't done a thing at all. I was already tired, and this scene only made me feel more drained. Unable to hold back, I confronted him. "Hey, if you're going to lounge around all day, at least do some chores." I couldn't help but snap at him. He had always assumed I'd take care of everything, which was just not fair. We've talked about sharing household responsibilities multiple times. "What are you talking about? Isn't it a woman's job to take care of the house? I'm okay with you working, so the least you can do is take care of the house. It was as if he'd forgotten our earlier agreements. Not only did he have no intention of helping, but he also seemed to think that I chose to work on my own accord. Of course, he doesn't have the slightest inclination to reduce the burden on his wife when she comes home exhausted. Even though I've been working hard to maintain our income. Don't make me say this, but did you forget I'm sending money back home? Maybe a little gratitude would be nice. And I wish you'd take on some more responsibilities instead of dumping everything on me. Letting out my built-up frustrations, I confronted him with a sharp tone. And to that, he responded with something utterly shocking. Don't act all high and mighty, boasting over a mere $1,800 I send. And for the record, I've been saying housework is a woman's job, just make dinner already. A mere $1,200, he clearly said that. Who was the one who couldn't afford to give me that mere amount and had to ask me for it? Moreover, I was flabbergasted that he could say such things when he himself relied on money from his parents. But any time I mentioned the money I sent home, he'd bring up the idea of what if we live with my parents. There's no way I'd want to live under the same roof with my in-laws. Given the choice between living together and sending money, I inevitably chose the latter. How did things end up like this? I regretted it deeply. One day, amidst this daily strife, Jones told me he had something serious to discuss. He looked serious and asked me to sit. Wondering what this was about, I sat directly across from him. You know, I found someone else. I want to marry her. So, can we divorce? Oh, and you should move out. I couldn't believe my ears. Did you just say marry? I was at a loss for words, but managed to mumble this one sentence.
Without changing his expression, Jones continued, I just can't see you as my wife anymore. I want to divorce and marry the one I love.
I thought it was some kind of joke, but his face was dead serious. At first, I was shocked, but my shock quickly turned to anger. Just because he's found someone he likes, it doesn't mean he can suddenly decide to divorce me. But getting mad wouldn't change the situation. I tried to contain my anger and responded calmly. What are you thinking? Cheating while we're married and then asking for a divorce, telling me to leave the house? And what's with your attitude? I intended to be calm, but I was clearly livid. Maybe he can't help falling in love. But he is my husband, and this isn't some college fling. It might seem selfish to you, but no one can stop how I feel now. It's not might seem selfish, it's utterly selfish. But he seemed lost in his own world and began to talk about my love. Listening to his creepy ramblings, everything started to feel pointless. What was our married life all about? I felt empty.
But now I couldn't see him the same way as before.
It feels like something strange and disgusting.
The next day, I went straight to the county office to get divorce papers.
After filling them out, I handed them to Jones. Oh, thanks. Sorry you had to do that. With a smirk, he accepted them. As I watched him fill them out, I couldn't help but imagine him with his new girl and felt nauseated. After he signed, we immediately went to the county office to submit the papers. I left the home I had shared with him for 2.5 years and moved back to my parents' house. Oddly, I wasn't sad at all seeing his elated face. Rather, I felt relieved to be free from such a jerk. Later, I demanded compensation from both him and his mistress. The compensation was hefty, but he paid it off with a laugh. The mistress also paid without much fuss. Apparently, she's quite wealthy and didn't seem to think it was a big deal. Breaking up with him meant I no longer had to send most of my salary back home, which was a relief. Using the compensation and the money I saved, I decided to take my parents on a spa vacation. Life after the divorce was so enjoyable that I wondered why I hadn't done this sooner. A few months post-divorce, as I was checking my phone after work, I noticed a missed call from Jones. I had forgotten to block his number, and just as I thought that, he called again. Curious about what he wanted, I answered. It's been a while. How have you been? His voice after such a long time. I thought I might feel a bit melancholic hearing from him, but it seems my feelings for him truly faded when we divorced. It just feels unpleasant now. Thanks to you, I've been doing better than we were married. What do you want? I can't help but be sarcastic. Jones, unfazed, started talking. I'm glad you're doing well. Remember how we parted? I've been worried about you ever since. How dare he say that? After dumping me for such a selfish reason, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So, what do you want? If you have nothing to say, I'll hang up. Regretting answering the call, I was ready to end the conversation. But he sounded desperate, shouting, "Wait," and then he dropped a bombshell. "Look, I want us to start over. Please come back." What? I was so taken aback by Jones' words that I was left speechless. How could he think of getting back after dumping me in such a horrible way? Then he began explaining why he desperately wanted me back. Turns out I can't live with you. Even my folks are saying we should get back together. Listening further, it seems the woman named his affair the cause of our divorce had dumped him. After I left, it seems she and Jones started living in my old house. However, she was a rich heiress who couldn't do any household chores, and Jones, he's utterly useless at housework. Apparently he had eyes for her wealth and started talking about receiving money from her parents even before they were married. This set off her anger meter. She didn't think that James was useless, and she demanded him pay back the alimony she had given me after dumping him. It's an absurd story, but nearly penniless, there's no way he could afford the same amount as the alimony. Infuriated, she made Jones borrow money from various shady lenders, and eventually he even got involved with loan sharks. With his eyes set on his lover's wealth, there's no way he could support his parents. In short, he probably wanted me back because he was financially struggling.
I've got no one but you. Please, come back to me.
His incredibly selfish words made me more amused than shocked. There's no way. I had so much to say, but those were the only words that came out. I hung up and immediately blocked his number. While he stopped calling my cell, he began calling my parents' house daily. I told my parents about Jones' call and advised them not to answer. He has to understand that I have no intention of getting involved with him anymore. His calls started to decrease, but it seems he was so desperate he still called my parents' house occasionally. A year after our divorce, his calls suddenly stopped. He probably gave up. Around that time, I happened to visit near my former in-laws' place. Coincidentally, I passed by Jones' family home. It was now an empty lot. The house was gone without a trace. Rumor has it that after our divorce, Jones lived there with his parents, but supporting his parents seemed tough. There were always loud arguments heard from their houses. Moreover, because of pressures from his affair and debt from loan sharks, menacing-looking people were often seen loitering around. In the end, he fell into a deep debt pit and ultimately lost his home. They apparently moved out hurriedly a while back. The house was eventually demolished. Someone who saw Jones when they moved out said he looked much older, almost unrecognizable. Nobody knows where or what he's doing now, but honestly, I couldn't care less, given how much his value had diminished in my eyes. Considering he stopped calling my parents' house, he might be in a situation where he can't even make a phone call. He and his parents exploited my kindness, and this is the result. I don't feel a shred of sympathy. Later on, my parents and I decided to buy a new apartment, a fancy high-rise with security features, ensuring safety on many levels. Of course, it's with my money, but it's also a fact that I used the money I got from Jones and his lover. I think in a twisted way, I should maybe thank him for my current happiness. I vow never to end up like that and plan to enjoy life with my parents. Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. If you resonated with the content, please leave a positive rating and a comment.